I think we have another treat for you right now. Lauren Faber O'Connor is our next speaker, talking on the topic of a new dream for the world, which is conscious investing. When I learned a couple of years ago that investors were now directing people instead of just towards the single bottom line of profitability, and instead talking about people, planet, and profit, I was excited. When I heard that Mike Bloomberg and his partner from the Bank of England, Mark Carney, got investors together to commit $130 trillion, trillion with a T, for climate solutions, I was excited. When I learned about C40 and how C40 and the Global Covenant of Mayors are speeding and scaling environmental solutions around the world, wow, I thought, we have a lot of the components that we need to beat this thing and to save the planet for humanity. And I found a kindred spirit in Lauren Faber O'Connor. She's the former Chief Sustainability Officer for the City of Los Angeles, Chief Architect of the City of LA's New Green Deal. She's a partner with Lowercarbon Capital, and she switched from being a municipal worker to being a venture capital person, which is, I think, probably pretty smart. I worked for the City of LA before. It's interesting. Anyway, check this out. Lowercarbon Capital, her company, backs kick-ass companies and that make money slashing carbon dioxide, buying us time to un-F the planet, right? I love it. When I saw her business card, it didn't have it in writing, but it had it in indentations. Let's un-F the planet. I thought, I need to get that woman to speak at our conference. So please help me welcome Lauren Faber O'Connor.
All right, thank you, Greg, so much. It's so wonderful to be here, and thank you to Greg and the team for organizing such an important gathering and for folks taking the time out of their day, although what a beautiful place to be if you have to be somewhere other than where you might have normally been on a Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday day. So I'm super glad to be able to share this space with all of you and talk a little bit about kind of the perspective that I'm coming to climate action, climate emergency from. And I'll just start by sharing that I'm a born and raised Angelina. I grew up in Los Angeles, in the Hollywood Hills. And as I was growing up in LA, I kind of found myself interested in issues around pollution and environmental science. Didn't know what environmental science was. It definitely wasn't that in my teenage head. And sort of grew up conditioned that I would not ever work and live in Los Angeles, because it didn't really compute that being in LA would be the place to have a thriving career trying to save the planet. I actually saw a lot of, what are the worst fouls of the environment happening right in my backyard. So it's what made me passionate about the issue, but it didn't necessarily mean that this was where I could be to really address the issue. I felt like I had to go other places. And so my early career actually started in Washington, D.C. I worked for the British government at the time, 20 plus years ago. This was really in Europe, and in the UK specifically, was the really heart of climate action, at least in my studies and understanding at the time. And it was an incredible experience to work for the British government in particular, bringing some of those best practices to the US and to other parts of the world. And then as I was doing that work, I started to, and this was actually quite difficult for kind of even the UK diplomatic service and overall national government to wrap its mind around, as I was starting to wrap my brain around this, is that actually the action for policy change, which was at the time what I was really interested in, may not be at the national and global level. It was starting to become a little bit more at the kind of subnational level. And what we were seeing was really states taking action. This is not going to be a surprise to any of you, that states were really filling a void and leading on climate action. And so I took the opportunity to then come back home to California and work for Governor Schwarzenegger as the state was passing and implementing its California climate law, and continued to work for Governor Schwarzenegger. And really, during that time, and as I was working for Environmental Defense Fund, I was starting to see that, gosh, the next wave of action where I'm really seeing movement and change and impact on the ground and in practice is at the local level. And I will tell you, I never in a million years in my career and in my studies, I mean, I have 3 degrees in climate change related degrees. It never really, maybe in one class, kind of came up that local action was where to make a big difference and have an outsized impact on the issues that we face around environmental peril, environmental harm, and climate-leading solutions that can scale beyond any one set of borders. But here we were in an opportunity that I saw in Los Angeles, under Mayor Garcetti, our previous mayor, that was really changing the ethos. And I'm certain that a number of people in this room were contributing to that evolution in Southern California. And so thank you so much for that history of work that at least brought little old me back to Los Angeles now 10 years ago to come work for the city and work for my hometown and do work that I was seeing change truly in my backyard. And that was really special and impactful. And I take so many lessons from that time and am happy to reflect on any of that time working directly for the city and with communities and businesses and the academic community, local organizations, to think about how do we make change neighborhood by neighborhood across the city. And Greg rightly pointed out C40, which is an institution of mayors across the 98 largest cities in the world who are committed to taking bold action on climate change across the entire globe. And we were really proud. Mayor Garcetti was the chair of this global organization of mayors leading on climate action, funded by some of the biggest climate funders on the planet, as the place to make change. And we were the chair of that organization for a couple of years. And that was an amazing opportunity to take the best lessons, the most interesting, impactful actions that are happening in other parts of the world, bring them to Los Angeles, and see how much people were taking from what we were doing in LA. But I will say, sort of as part of my personal evolution on what can I be doing to have the most impact on this issue, knowing that my daughter will be significantly younger than I am today in 2050, there's a lot we have to do, and there's a lot at stake, and that's what motivates me every day. What problems was I facing in my work when I was pushing on an open door in my day job to take bold steps on climate, to implement ambitious practices in the city across power, water, transportation, the built environment, waste, food systems, so many things, dealing with the extractive industries in Los Angeles, pushing on an open door from a policy perspective, politically, we had a broad base of support. It didn't necessarily mean that it was easy or obvious what to do, and it didn't necessarily, and I mean that more from what the best technology solutions were for certain issues, and it didn't necessarily mean that that it was going to be easy economically either. And so I felt very strongly that there were a series of challenges, particularly around the economics of solutions, that I couldn't solve in my current work at the time. And I needed to move into what I was now seeing as really the sector that was being poised for dramatic impact on this problem, which is the finance sector. And that could, when Greg's talking about how much money is being mobilized on climate, that money is not all one color or one type. That money is doing multiple different things and coming into the economy in different ways, whether we're building physical infrastructure, whether we're founding new companies, funding research. That money looks different, and we actually need all kinds of dollars across what we call the capital stack to come in urgently. And so that was what I set out to do, and had the great opportunity to come to a company called Lowercarbon Capital, based here in Los Angeles. And we're a venture capital fund focused on exclusively investing in climate technologies, in early stage companies, building new technologies that will fundamentally disrupt our current way of doing business. Unique insofar as for young companies, this means we have to build things. We're not necessarily solving climate through apps and software. There's a lot of things that, yes, can be much more efficient through those types of solutions, but actually what we need to do is be displacing the fossil fuel-based infrastructure that we have today across energy, across the built environment, across food and agriculture, industrial materials, all of these things. And what's exciting is that when Lowercarbon Capital was initially founded, it was actually during the last Trump administration in about 2016. And it was based on the understanding that if we are going to solve this problem, we can assume that there are probably 100,000, 200,000 people on this planet who are willing to go out of their way, suffer some inconvenience, pay a little bit more to do the right thing by the environment, by the climate. But that still leaves over 7 billion people for whom that doesn't work, for whom we need to find solutions that they have unknowingly become hippies, just like the rest of us. And that's a really exciting prospect, because what we saw is that technology evolution and innovation was at a state where we really could be finding solutions that are simply better, faster, cheaper. And what led us to that conclusion at the time? Finally, decades of research in different sectors were coming to fruition, and capital could be coming in to literally capitalize on all of that innovation and development. First, of course, we have seen renewable energy prices and costs falling such that it's way more efficient and way cheaper to build new solar than to maintain a coal-fired power plant. That wind and solar plus batteries can compete directly with natural gas-based power. This is a really exciting development which was going to underpin the functioning of the rest of the economy if power and the cost of power wasn't going to be the limiting factor. Similarly, in electrochemistry, advances in electrochemistry were mostly based in all the work around consumer electronics, electric vehicles, things like that, even batteries in the power sector. But what that has unlocked is a new opportunity in electrochemistry in industrial materials to basically create the electric vehicle versions of making cement and steel and sustainable aviation fuels through non-combustion, ambient temperature-based chemical, hydrolyzed-based processes that now are unlocking industrial processes that are super energy intensive, 25% of US emissions coming from the industrial sector. We've also seen in advances in the biotech industry, gene editing, in gene sequencing, in kind of DNA-related research, mostly for the purposes of therapeutics and the medical field more broadly. What that has unlocked for us is an entire field in materials and chemicals that can become bio-based enzymatic processes to displace fossil fuel chemicals, nitrogen fertilizers, such exciting opportunities ready to go. And then AI basically accelerating all of that. And we can talk about the pros and cons of the race toward AI dominance, but what we are seeing in our day-to-day is truly how it continues to unlock innovation and help us speed innovation around climate, especially when it comes to kind of hard tech, deep tech questions and solutions that are needed that are very expensive to iterate on. If you build a cement plant the wrong way, it's not the same thing as doing an overnight, app reset. That's a really big, piece of investment. And so if you can tackle and test some of these questions much more deeply and quickly through AI, hey, helps quite a bit. So our thesis at Lower Carbon Capital is three main things. We are defossilizing the economy through our investments. Our investments are sucking carbon out of the atmosphere because the IPCC has now told us for many, many years now that even if we were to get to zero net new emissions today, we have to pull legacy carbon out of the atmosphere in order to keep ourselves below dangerous levels of carbon dioxide. And we have to help communities, people, and places getting hurt first and worst by climate today. We call that buying time. And so our investments basically fall into these three buckets. And this is not, we don't necessarily look at our investments as concessionary, as just impact oriented. This is underpinning the future of our economy. We have to be able to make this work for everybody if we're going to have a long-lasting, sustainable, and I mean enduring, sustainable, clean economy. So that's how we base our investments, and there's so many opportunities to be able to do that. A few quick examples. I mentioned the industrial sector being 25% of US emissions. Antora is a company that is building thermal batteries in carbon blocks, which are encased in these white boxes here. So very modular, carbon-based graphite, essentially, boxes that can hold heat from excess renewables. They get charged up from excess renewables on the grid. They can hold heat for a significant amount of time and dispatch that heat at industrial-grade temperatures. They're powering ethanol refineries today, completely displacing natural gas for that kind of combustion. Really exciting. I think I mentioned cement already because sort of like once you think about cement, you really can't unsee it. It is just everywhere, right? It's such a core foundational material in society. We can't stop building things, but we can, it turns out, not just make small tweaks around how we make cement, we can completely reform how we make cement, remove the whole concept of the kiln, creating mini volcanoes, essentially to melt rocks and create cementitious material. We can use an electrochemistry that precipitates on the other end the exact same material that industry today is used to using, that meets and beats today's standards for cement, and is made by plugging a factory into the grid. And so it is so exciting, a company like Sublime, female-founded company based in Boston that we work really deeply with. I talk about buying time, an LA-based company. We have been, when I started with the city in 2015, we were in the midst of a historic drought. And the idea of the different opportunities and the different strategies that we had to basically make LA more water independent and water resilient are strong, and we're investing deeply in them. But it also, to some degree, depends on being able to capture rain when we have it. We have been cloud seeding in the US and across the world for many, many, many decades. It's a very common thing to do, but now what we can be doing with the help of a company like Rainmaker is much more precision, much better attribution, much better tracking of what water actually precipitated from their actions. And really help farmers, help water utilities, help states do better water planning as a result. So an extremely exciting local company. Coming out of a really tough time in Los Angeles, I know that wildfire, I believe that wildfire has been a subject or will be a subject of this gathering, and it's really visceral for all of us right now, but it has been for a long time as a Californian. We need to think about and develop better ways to support our communities. Stand is a company that is a wildfire insurance company that's running toward the fire, not away from the fire, toward working with homeowners and communities, not running away from them and abandoning them, because they have developed critical technologies that essentially develop digital twins of your home and other types of algorithms that proactively help homeowners make much more prescriptive mitigations and interventions around the home and to the home, and get rewarded in their premium, rather than what we're seeing now, which is if you don't make these dramatic blanket, interventions across communities, we're not going to go near you. And so it's a much more partnership-oriented approach enabled by technology to protect homes in the face of wildfire. And so I just wanted to really end with a reminder that we are experiencing, and we can show that defossilizing the economy is in fact very good business, that we aren't trying to open up new sectors. We just need to replace the ones and we know the market is there, because we are just developing alternatives that are better, faster, cheaper, tastier, more performant, and more comfortable. These are things that are happening today in the innovation ecosystem. We are deploying over $2 billion in this space, and are evangelists for this very effort, understanding that we have to help bring everyone along. And I'll tell you, whether or not there's policy in place, whether or not there's technology in place, the next step is a lot about human behavior. And I don't mean just us as individuals, humans that make up the companies that are the targets of a lot of these early stage startups. This is about people rolling up their sleeves, being willing to try new technologies, spending the extra time to understand the technology and bring them forward. A lot of it is down to not political will, but sort of individual human will to work together and make what in the end you'll look back as pretty simple changes, but when you've been doing something the same way for decades, it takes a beat, right? To change it up a little bit. And that's where we are right now. I've never been more optimistic in my 20 years in climate than I have been since joining Lowercarbon, but it does take a different form. I've been used to kind of the world of political will. We're really in the human and commercial will. We've broken the capital will. We're engaged from an investment perspective. It's really down to giving time and space for people to demonstrate the solutions in a commercial ecosystem. And I know that there's so many people here who, through your voice, demanding the products that you purchase, through your partners in the commercial ecosystem, who can truly work together. This was just a reinforcement that a lot of these solutions, again, aren't slowing down because of the questions around politics. These are inevitable outcomes in our communities, in society. And so it's a question of how fast, not of if. Thank you.
I told you she was great, right? I love it. I like to describe the times that we're in as having one foot in the Jetsons and one foot in Star Trek, right? And it's coming true. The other day I saw a commercial from United Airlines announcing flying taxis, electric flying taxis to be commercially available here in the US, I think in LA, Dallas, and DC. And we've known for years now that it's possible to 3D print human skin, which is dramatically changing people's ability, burn victims' ability to recover. Crazy stuff, but it's coming true, and it's coming true right now. So I'd like to invite the rest of the panel up. Please, we're going to have a panel discussion right now.